I gotta tell you guys, this custom rear suspension build just might be the death of me. But after a month of cutting, grinding, welding, air hammering, and plasma cutting, the light just might be at the end of the tunnel. And if everything goes according to plan, by the end of today, our all-wheel drive, Pro Touring, soon to be LS swapped, second gen Chevy Syclone just might be sitting back on the ground with all four wheels underneath it. So, just a quick backstory. The whole reason why we have tackled this suspension in the first place is because of the awful wheel hop that this truck exhibited. And before we change the engine out and build it to our ultimate goal of 750 to 800 horsepower, we needed to stop that wheel hop and have a suspension that can put the power down to the ground. And I've always wanted to build a 3-link. So here's where we're at. I've got all of the forward links done. That was pretty easy, one of the first thing we did. The lowers are directly under the frame, and the center is, or the upper link rather, is just off center to allow room for the exhaust. The panhard bar, we just finished that up last time. That's gonna locate the axle side to side, and the only thing that we have left to do is hold the axle up and down, and that's gonna be the job of the coil springs that go in this big empty space right here. We're gonna be using these not QA1. We're gonna be using these Viking Warrior shocks. It has a 7 3/4 inch stroke on it, which is a fairly long shock. Right now it's about halfway compressed. So we need to use every last inch of space. The upper eyelet's gonna be sitting above the frame a little bit, and the lower is gonna be approximately even with the bottom of the link mounts. The bottom is a QA1 heavy duty mount I picked up from Summit Racing. I will put that link down in the description below as always. We gotta put a little space in there. I'll explain that as we go along, but that's what we need to do. That's our goal, is to fill that space with springs. So let's jump right in. So I use this trick anytime I'm welding two brackets together that have a fairly precise fit. I've got 20 thousandths worth of pinion shims, or pinion bearing shims, and I just stack them in between to space the two brackets apart ever so slightly. And then I'll tighten this together. That way, when I weld it and it's, you know, the bolts are tight, it'll allow just enough room for this middle part to easily slide in and out. You don't have to fight it. We can weld it onto that guy. All right, I got the outsides welded. That's kind of cooling off. I plan on trying to weld the insides in just a second here, but I did have to take a quick detour. The wife wagon had some brakes that were absolutely shot, so I got new brakes, new pads on both sides. I got the other side already done, so we'll get this buttoned up and back to welding. All right, next day, brakes are taken care of back on the suspension project. We got one side welded up, it's cooled down, ready to install the axle. I just want to show you real quick though why I'm adding this little sleeve in here. Basically, all of the shock brackets that I could find were designed around a 3-inch axle tube, some even like 3.5 for big 1-ton stuff. But the 8.5 10 bolt that I've got in the S10, for whatever reason, they neck the axle tube down like it's 3 here, but it goes down to 2.5. You can maybe just barely see the taper right through there. Anyhow, the 3-inch bracket just doesn't fit really great on the axle tube. There's going to be a gap either at the top or the bottom or all the way around. And you could probably just fill that up with a MIG, but I did not like that idea. I'd rather have a nice tight fit. So by installing this quarter wall spacer in here, basically that eliminates all my problems. It has a nice flush fit with this onto the axle. Plus, it maybe will make it a little bit stronger, which I kind of like. So I'll get the other side welded up, then we'll clean the last bit of paint off the axle. And then I think also These sway bar mounts, I was hoping to keep them, but with the way the suspension has turned out, there's no way the factory sway bar that I had on here is going to work. So we'll get rid of that. And if in the future we ever do need a sway bar, then we'll build something that attaches up here to this cross member that is going to exist, hopefully, very shortly. So let's carry on. So now all I got to do is figure out where the shock brackets need to go on the axle. I want to keep them outboard as far as possible, but still allow room so the coil doesn't rub on the frame. So right about there. So we had a little oopsie here. I didn't make the hole the right size, so it doesn't look proportional to me. So we're just gonna fix it. Simple as that. Yeah. A little bit of grinding. We'll never know we had to fix that. Just a little while later, the welds have cooled on the axle, the shock mounts are done, the lowers are anyway, and I think that's like the very last bit of welding and grinding that I have to do on the axle. So theoretically, I could prime and paint it now, but I'm just gonna wait till everything is done and then handle all the priming and painting at once. Probably won't do the whole frame, but I'll do at least the spots that we have welded. Now it's time for the cross member. So I have some 2-inch OD DOM tube, and basically I'm gonna have two cross members that go kind of in this area, and the shock is going to sit right in between them. And the reason I'm doing that over just like a simple tab mounted on a tube is for clearance. The spring and shock combo that I'm running is fairly long, and I need the upper eyelet of the shock to be almost touching the bed. So by having two cross members, I can have the shock go in between them and the upper mount stick up above just a tiny bit, like I said, almost touching the bed floor. So I'm gonna get started. I'm gonna punch some holes in the outside of the frame like here and here, and then I'll just slip the tube through, kind of like I did on the four-wheel drive drag truck, which actually mimicked a factory frame construction technique. So I thought it worked good on that one. I think it'll work good here. We're gonna have the tube welded to the outside of the frame. We're gonna have a boxing plate. It's gonna be welded to the inside of the frame. And then on this back one here, we can run a big kind of triangular gusset between the panhard bar mount and the cross member to make sure that is plenty strong to resist any side-to-side motion of the suspension. So, I'm sweating. Let's carry on. All right, everything's temporarily out of the way. I'm just gonna kind of map out how much further ahead this front cross member is going to be. Just need to leave room for the shock to sit so it can pivot, because as that axle goes up and down, the shock is going to ever so slightly kind of want to rock back and forth, so I could have room on the back of the shock and room on the front for it to do its thing. And I'm just going to kind of eyeball it, make sure we have enough room for the axle to travel and not interfere, which means the cross member is going to go somewhere right in here. Aww. All right, guys, we're going to start keeping track of tools I have to borrow from Chris. My battery's dead. Sorry, buddy. Tool number 2. First one being the air hammer. So we got the first brace made. It's going to go inside the channel of the frame just like that. It's going to help strengthen this panhard bar mount, because right now this is going to want to flex that way quite a bit because it's on an open C channel. Having a reinforcement inside the frame will strengthen it up quite a bit. I'm going to have one here and one on the back that actually comes on the outside down here, goes up in the frame, and then up to tie into the tube cross member that's going to go this way. And it'll maybe stick out about that far, so which will really help strengthen this guy right here. Because remember, the panhard bar is pushing back and forth. And then we're going to cover this all in a boxing plate to tie it together and make it even stronger. So if you think this looks a lot like the piece I just made, you've been paying attention. So I've ran the numbers, and by welding these reinforcement stringers inside the open channel of the frame, we've already increased the stiffness of the panhard bar mount by 372.5%, give or take. Because right now, this sucker is rock solid, where before if I did that, it would just kind of flex the open channel of the frame up and down. So that is rock solid for now, but we're not done, because we are still gonna, of course, add the boxing plate that ties the top and the bottom together. I'll have some way to a slot or something to weld the boxing plate to these stringers. And then of course we have an open cavity here that we're gonna weld up as well. And then once the cross members and all that are done, I'm still gonna have a gusset that goes from the bottom here up to the cross member. So it's going to be super duper strong, but just doing that already, like I said, 372% stronger, give or take. I don't know what the margin of error is though. But anyway, next thing up, we gotta get the inner boxing plates made for the frame. So right back at it. The only thing I gotta do is trim this top edge down by the thickness of the frame rail, just so I can have it sitting inside. I don't want it on the flat surface. I want it on the inside, because this little notch right here, that's a factory little bump out there, and there's one up here. That's what they use to hold a plate in place. That's kind of the same thing you see up there along the frame. And yes, there will be 2 holes in these plates for the cross members to pass through. So let's turn that into metal. Now I also did add just a little kind of radius to each end here, just to give it a sort of decorative touch, and also to kind of mimic what the factory did on their boxing plates on the front half of the frame. All right, there's one. Yeah. update on the S10. I've been working up front all this week, so I haven't had time to do much, but I did get the inner boxing plates drilled out, and we have the cross members now running all the way through. So we're just about ready to get those welded in place. I think I am gonna do, well, we already talked about the gusset, so never mind. That's where we're at. We'll keep on cranking on this bad boy. Now we are getting very close to the finish line on this project. Ugh, Hondas. We're getting close to the finish line on this project. Really, the only last thing I have to do now is get an upper mount for the coilovers built, and then we should be able to get the truck on the ground, like on its own weight on the wheels, which is a huge milestone. But I'm just thinking back, it's been such a hectic last couple of weeks. I think I started the stuff that you are watching in this episode 3 or 4 weeks ago, and now, I mean, it's been hectic. We built the 8.1 tow truck with the 8.8 heads in the middle of this, and a bunch of stuff going on at the shop side of things. But anyway, yeah, we're needing to build the upper coilover mounts. And if you remember from like way back when I started this project, these are, I believe, a 7 3/4 inch travel coilover. They're about, I forget the total extended length, but short version of the story is I need the upper spring mount to actually sit above the level of the frame and get pretty close to the bed floor, so I can use all the travel of the shock and still keep a nice low ride height. So to do that, I had to get a little bit creative in the arts and crafts department. I started out with this guy here. That's just a simple shape that shows the what the bottom of the bed looks like. You can see there's the rib back there that bolts right there. There's the front part of the frame there that doesn't bolt, but it sits right on the frame right there. Anyhow, I took that and I made a negative of it to kind of represent how much clearance I have. And as you can see, I've got that much. So from there, I skipped ahead in time. I made this rough template and I turned that into a little bit more polished version. And this is now what I have to build. It's gonna sit right there. We're gonna weld it in. It's gonna clear the bed floor. It's gonna be close, but I'll have just enough clearance so it won't rub. And then of course the coilover, once I drill the hole, it's kind of hard to hold everything and show you, but it's gonna sit something sort of kind of like that with the upper part of the shock sitting right between our two cross members. So let's take that and turn it into metal. All right, the upper brackets are welded up, cleaned up, and ready to go on. I just got this glove in here to sort of protect the shaft while I tack weld it on here. Took a bunch of measurements just to make sure we're all centered up. So let's get it on. Let's weld it on. Okay, we'll get back to the rear suspension build in just a second, but first, it's new wheel and tire day, and I gotta show you what we just got in the mail. If you remember, the S10 is going to be built in a pro touring / autocross vibe, so I need a wheel and tire that'll help the truck handle and accelerate and stop all really well. Up until now, the truck has been riding on these. We've got a 17x9, I believe it's a Corvette C4 wheel. We got these all the way around, and for tires, we got these junky 225s that I just kind of found laying around. They're pretty well balled. And at least it got me around until I could buy the final tire that would go on those 17-inch wheels. But the problem I quickly realized is 17s are kind of outdated, and there's not a lot of options out there for tires, especially in the diameter that I want. Those wheels, I believe, were equipped originally with a 275/40 17, which is like 25.6 inches tall, which is just a hair shorter than the tire that's on there now. And as you can see, these don't even fill out the fender well all that good. And if I went with a smaller tire, it just would look wrong. And I don't want to lower the truck even further. So I needed a larger diameter, but a tire that met what I wanted, I just don't think it exists. So to modernize the look of the truck and have more tire options, we are upsizing the wheels to 18s. Not a huge difference, but this is also an opportunity to upgrade the looks. So this is the tire that I decided on. This is a Pirelli 275/45 18, and I only bought two for now because I happen to have a matched pair on the front of the ugly truck. I initially had a set of 4 on the ugly truck, but the rear ones, I don't know what happened. They didn't last all that long. Now I have a set of 4 tires. This is the exact diameter that I want. I believe it works out to just under 28 inches or so. But of course, we need a wheel to mount the tires on. And there's a lot of S10 wheels out there, but the problem is most S10 based wheels are for a 2-wheel drive, and they're more of a drag style. But with the rear axle that I have in this truck that's 4 inches wider than stock, and the wide front track width of the 4-wheel drive chassis, a Corvette wheel really has the ideal fitment. So I hopped online, I tried to find some stuff on Marketplace, but the problem with used wheels is you can't find the same, a set of 4 like 18x9s, for example, because most Corvette wheels originally were staggered. They had like an 18 up front and a 19 in the rear. So I hopped over to OE Wheels and I found these bad boys right here. So this is a C7 Corvette Z06 wheel in gunmetal gray, and if I can get it out of the box, there we go, we can take a look. So 18 by 8.5, I have a set of 4 of these so we can run the same exact tire all the way around. Now I was kind of debating on the color. I settled on the gunmetal, but this wheel is available in black and chrome, but I think the gunmetal fit my final vision that I have for this truck perfectly. And the only other thing I was kind of torn about was, do I do a staggered set with like an 18 by 10.5 for the rear with a 315 or a 335 and then the 8.5 up front? But again, the only problem there was finding a tire that had a staggered fitment with the same circumference or the same revolutions per mile, because with all-wheel drive, full-time all-wheel drive, you got to have the same size tire. Now, eventually I might get a full set of 18 by 10.5s and put like 315s all the way around. But I think that'll be more for like track only, where this is a good, I think, daily driver set / occasional fun at the track. So OE Wheels, I'll put the link down below for these. They had a bunch of different designs, and it was a toss-up for me between the Z06 C7 or the C6 ZR1 wheel. Both looked really awesome, and they had the same fitment options. But like I said, maybe later on down the road, I'll grab like a 18 by 10.5 with a really nice sticky like 315 Hoosier for like just track days. But I'm really pumped. So let's get these mounted up, see what they look like. Maybe that's what this thing is for. Don't know if that is what this tool is for, but it kind of makes sense. It's got like rubber on it to not scratch the wheel, so I guess it kind of works. Now, I know some people say that you're not a real car guy if you don't take your brand new tires out and do a burnout to get rid of the sticker. I get that. I love doing burnouts, but my OCD prevents me from driving around with stickers on my tires. Sorry, Matt. All right, see how far off I got that. Cool. Ow! Man. I'm gonna turn the volume up on that for you guys so you can experience it the same way I did. Gotta say, guys, definitely think we're making a step in the right direction. It's kind of 90s vibe. Nothing wrong with that. I do like them, but definitely, we're bringing the old S10 into the 21st century. Really like it. I am really pumped right now because this is a big moment. It's the first time the truck will be sitting on the ground, holding up its own weight with a fully custom 3-link rear suspension. This project has been dragging on. I think I started it about 2 months ago. I mean, I haven't been working on it straight. There's a lot going on at the shop and other stuff, but yeah, I'm pumped. I want to see how the wheels look. I want to see how the stance look. I want to see how the ride height is with it on the ground. Of course, the bed's not on it yet, but we're going to get our brand new wheels and tires installed. Although I did break the cardinal rule of testing wheels and tires. I didn't even actually attempt to test fit it. I think it should be okay because we have a larger diameter than what I had on there before. And I know the specs of the wheels that are on there, and I know how these ones fit compared to that. So I think theoretically we'll be okay. But fingers crossed, let's get the wheels on and get the truck on the ground. Now, I'm not sure yet what I want to do for lug nuts. Probably just need to buy a black set, but for now, I just have these gold ones that had the screw-on plastic cap that works well with the other wheels, but definitely need something a little classier for these. All right. Plenty of clearance around the brakes. I had to go back and double check, but I found the date, and it was the second week in June where I started this project. The very first thing that we did was go in the parking lot and try to do a burnout, and I showed you guys how bad this S10 wheel hopped when we were applying power. And that was the whole, or part of the reason why we started this 3-link conversion, because as we add V8 power to the truck, we need a chassis that can put that power down to the ground without violently shaking itself to death. And now, the 9th of August, many weeks later, we finally have the truck sitting on the ground on its own weight, looking good with a new set of wheels. Definitely digging these OE wheels. As far as color goes, yeah, I know it's not a great blend right now with this weird tan brown color, but I'm gonna put a picture up on the screen of a truck that I draw inspiration from. It's the LS9 swapped Colorado single cab you guys have probably seen. It looks really good with bright blue paint and a similar color wheel. So that's kind of the vibe that I eventually want to go for. But I'm just so pumped right now to see this thing on the ground, to see all those weeks of planning ahead of time paying off and seeing this all fitting under the frame. It was a challenge to get this all to fit, don't get me wrong. But like the coilovers, for example, it was tough to get the coilovers mounted and have a panhard bar all inboard of the frame. But if I would have taken a different route, for example, and had the coilovers out here, they would have been rubbing these tires. But now I have a 275 that fits with a mile of room, and I could also add a 315 on a 10.5-inch wide wheel, no problem. Probably even up to an 11 if I really wanted to. So yeah, it is like, it's so cool just to kind of stare at it and see that vision that was in my head kind of come to life. I'm not quite done yet. There's a few little odds and ends, like the brake line mount tabs I got to reattach. I got to redo the hard lines along the axle here, redo the mount up here for the brake line, stuff like that. Of course, get the fuel tank mounted back up. I do need to build the gusset still for the brace that's going to attach the lower panhard bar mount up to the Crossmember, just to further strengthen that. But that's kind of it. I debated for a little while whether or not I should add another Crossmember up here above the fuel tank and then tie it back into this mount, but I may not for now because this is a pretty solid mount by itself. And this Crossmember has been fully welded together and fully welded into the chassis. So I think from a strength perspective, we may be okay. But anyway, this is, like I said, major milestone, and I am still not done yet. So we'll keep on cranking. We're gonna get like the fuel tank back in. The one corner I'm probably gonna cut, and you guys, feel free to roast me in the comments, but when it comes to painting this stuff, like paint is the one area of a project where I am totally happy cutting corners and, for lack of a better word, half-assing it. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'll edge prime and paint all the bare metal that we've added, but there's so much rust along this frame. It goes all the way under the cab, all the way up to the front suspension, that, yeah, I thought about like wire wheeling it from here back, but every time I do that and I don't do the whole frame, then it kind of bugs me even more because it's like, where do you stop? And for me, I would much rather get this like first phase of the truck done, and maybe when we get to the paint and body stage, we'll totally blow it apart. We'll like sandblast and powder coat the frame. But I don't know, I may get a crazy hair and at least get this back half spray painted. But yes, major milestone. I'm really happy right now. Can't wait to get this thing done. A few more odds and ends to go. But thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate you. More cool projects rolling through the shop. I know you gave me a hard time about like, oh, I don't finish anything and I don't work on my own stuff. Well, yeah, we got a business to run, but we got a turbo Silverado we're doing next time. I think you'll probably enjoy that. And as soon as I get the suspension done and the bed back on the S10, get it on the ground, gonna drive it for a couple weeks, and then the real fun begins. We're gonna add some more horsepower with that 5.3 right there that's been collecting dust. Oh, an ugly truck, it's getting a new set of shoes too. It's new wheel and tire day, and I just got a package that I got to show you my package, guys.